Welcome to Revenge Threads. I'm really curious. What country are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I always believed we had something rare. After 25 years together, you think you know a person, you think you've built something permanent. My husband and I weren't perfect, but we had built a life. A home, children, years of memories stacked like bricks into a foundation I thought would never crack. But all it took was one message. One single message. It was a quiet evening, one of those nights when the kids are out and everything feels peaceful. I was scrolling through our shared iPad searching for a recipe when the notification came in. iCloud had synced his old messages, something he must have forgotten to delete. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. I clicked. And that's when I saw it. Messages with another woman, her name unfamiliar. Dozens of them. Heart emojis, inside jokes, casual mentions of meeting up. My stomach turned when I realized these weren't old. They were just a few months ago, long after he swore he was just tired from work, too busy for date nights, stressed. I kept scrolling until I saw it. I wish I could wake up next to you again. So it wasn't just emotional, it was physical. And then I froze. He had told me it was just one woman, someone he barely knew, that it was over. But now I saw the truth. They had met multiple times and the relationship had lasted over a year. 18 months. 18 months of my life. A year and a half, where he looked me in the eye and lied. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront him, not yet. Instead, I screenshotted everything. I sent the messages to my private email. Every word. Every photo. Every disgusting confession. Then I sat in silence for hours, staring at the wall, trying to process the depth of the betrayal. But this story isn't about the heartbreak. This story is about what I did next. You see, there was one line in their messages that stuck with me, something she wrote to him. "She'll never find out. You told me you deleted everything." He didn't, and now I had it all. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was going to be justice. Real, slow-burning, calculated justice. And it was just getting started that I didn't confront him that night. I didn't even hint that I knew. I cooked dinner like always. We sat down at the table. He talked about work like always. I nodded, smiled politely, offered him another glass of wine, like always. He had no idea I was staring across the table at a man I no longer recognized. In his mind, everything was fine. She was gone, the affair was in the past. He had done the noble thing by ending it. But in my mind, he was still cheating. Because I didn't get a choice. He decided to lie for 18 months. And even after it ended, he still didn't confess. I had to find out by accident. And that's what hurt most. So I decided to play the long game. You don't stay married to someone for 25 years without learning how they operate. His routines, his patterns, his tells. I knew his weaknesses better than anyone else. And now I was going to use them. First, I backed everything up. I created a private drive and stored the screenshots, the chat logs, the timestamps. I started keeping a journal. Not a dramatic tear-stained diary, but a methodical, legal-style documentation of everything. Every time he stayed out late. Every time he texted while smiling to himself. Every shift in his behavior. All of it cataloged and dated. Then I started pulling his financial records. You'd be surprised how careless people get when they think they've gotten away with something. Venmo payments labeled as groceries that didn't match our shopping schedule. Hotel receipts buried under business travel. Gift cards that mysteriously disappeared from our holiday stash. Each one was a breadcrumb. Each one more proof. But I wasn't only gathering ammo. I was also protecting my children. They were the reason I didn't just burn it all down the moment I found out. I couldn't let them watch our family implode overnight. I had to do this carefully, strategically. I needed to build a case so airtight that when the hammer finally dropped, he wouldn't know what hit him. So for a few months, I was the perfect wife. I laughed at his dumb jokes. I folded his laundry. I even initiated date nights. And behind his back, I was dismantling him piece by piece. The mistress, oh, she was next. He thought she got away clean too. But she made one mistake. She underestimated me. She thought I was some clueless housewife with a broken heart. She didn't know I was biding my time. She didn't know I had her home address. And she definitely didn't know that soon, her own daughters would know exactly what kind of woman their mother really was. I didn't want revenge that night. I wanted it to last. To burn. To leave a mark she could never hide. Because forgiveness is something you earn. And neither of them had even tried. It was almost too easy. She had no idea I'd found her on Facebook months earlier. No idea that her account was public just long enough for me to pull every family connection she had. Daughters. Husband. Sisters. Nieces. I had names, addresses, birthdays, photos. Everything. I waited 2 months after that first phone call. She lied to me. Straight to my face. Said the affair was emotional. Claimed it ended clean. Swore her family knew. Said I was just hung up on something that was already over. I knew better. The truth was still pulsing under the surface, like a wound that hadn't scabbed over. I wanted her to bleed. So I wrote the letter. Not a rant. Not an emotional outburst. Just facts. Cold, clinical, detailed. Dates. Messages. Timeline. Screenshots. And one simple question. Did you know this is who your mother really is? 24 hours later, silence. 48 hours later, she cracked. I'd sent them certified. Tracked every signature. I knew when her husband got his. I knew when the daughters got theirs. I even knew the moment she realized the walls were closing in, because she tried to call me from an unknown number at 1:23 a.m. She didn't leave a voicemail. He didn't need to. The next day, I intercepted her panic text to my husband. She was spiraling, terrified that her family would cut her off. She wasn't wrong. The daughters stopped speaking to her. Her nieces unfollowed her. Her sisters blocked her number. She suddenly went dark online. No new posts. No smiling selfies. No comments under her daughter's photos. She disappeared. He thought it was over. Then I found the real proof. I was cleaning out a drawer when I found one of his old work iPads, still logged into his iCloud account. He never thought to change the backup settings. One tap and there it was. Months of deleted messages synced automatically. They met twice, not once. And yes, it was physical. There were messages so explicit I couldn't even read them out loud without wanting to gag. Her words, her language. It wasn't just infidelity, it was depraved. She didn't just break my marriage. She laughed about it, mocked me, called me clueless, bragged about how easy it was to keep me in the dark. That was when I decided. This wasn't just about punishment anymore. This was about ruin. I took the screenshots, I cleaned them up, cropped them neatly, highlighted the worst ones, and then I waited. 6 more weeks. 6 weeks of silence. 6 weeks for her to rebuild whatever flimsy bridge she thought she had with her daughters. Then I sent the second letter. No note, no preamble. Just the truth. Every vile, filthy, humiliating word, straight from her own texts. And I know she read them. Because this time she didn't call. He screamed. She raged. She tried to threaten me through LinkedIn of all things. Said I was harassing her. Said she'd press charges. Said I was unstable. I laughed. I showed my husband the messages. He shrugged. Do whatever you want, he said. She's not my problem anymore. And she wasn't mine either. Because revenge wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. 6 months passed. 6 months of silence. No messages. No emails. No cryptic LinkedIn rants. No daughters trying to smooth things over. No pitiful apologies. But I wasn't done. Not yet. See, I knew she had a daughter getting married soon. I'd found the registry when I searched her name months ago. Expensive china, boutique venue, full formal ceremony. The kind of wedding you plaster all over social media to prove your perfect family still existed. Cute. So I waited. Not because I wanted to crash it. I'm not that reckless. But I wanted her to think I would. I wanted her to feel me in the shadows. To wonder if I'd show up with printouts. Or with a microphone. Or with a banner unfurled across the church entrance. So I made a call. A very specific one. I called her work. The number she'd once used to contact me from a blocked line trying to get around my firewall. And I asked for her. But I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I was calm, polite, and concise. I need to leave a message for her, I said. Let her know I didn't get my invitation to the wedding at venue name, but I'll be seeing her there. And maybe then she can explain why she sleeps with married men. Silence. I could hear the pause on the other end. The shift. Her coworker, bless her heart, said I should probably tell her that directly. I smiled and said I would, when I saw her in person. Now let me be crystal clear. I never had any intention of going. I wasn't going to ruin some young bride's wedding day. She didn't deserve to become collateral in her mother's destruction. But her mother didn't know that. And for 2 whole weeks she unraveled. I know because she tried to reach me. Blocked numbers. Spoofed emails. Even tried to message my husband's LinkedIn, which he barely uses, and warned me about security, legal action, and immediate arrest if I stepped foot near the venue. She was terrified. And that made me smile. Then her best friend reached out to my husband, probably trying to play middleman, and he ignored it. We didn't even flinch. It was 15 months to the day since I found out about the affair, and 18 months since theirs had begun. Their entire relationship was a slow-motion car crash. Mine was surgical destruction. And when the wedding day finally came, I stayed home. I watched a movie. I didn't need to be there. She had already spent weeks dreading the moment I'd walk through those double doors. And that was better than any confrontation. Because she suffered on that day. She clutched her phone. She stared at the doors. She wondered if every woman in the back row was me. She worried if every server had a message to deliver. If every photo might become evidence. I let her haunt herself. She earned it. She was so careful for 18 months. So precise. So smug. And now her paranoia was a gift I gave her. And it would never go away. You thought I forgot about him, didn't you? No, I didn't. He wasn't just some casualty in this storm. He was the storm. He invited her in. He made room for betrayal. He hid behind her like a coward when it all came crashing down. And while I dealt my blows to her, I was quietly stacking my deck against him. You don't blow up a 25-year marriage overnight. Not if you're smart. Not if you want to win. That's what people don't get. They think revenge is impulsive, loud, wild. No. Real revenge is quiet, and irreversible. While he cried and begged and acted like he was healing from the mess he created, I was meeting with attorneys, setting up accounts, copying documents, making plans. He thought I was rebuilding. I was preparing an exit wound. You want to know what hurts a man like him the most? It's not tears. It's not shouting. It's not even cheating back. It's losing everything he took for granted, piece by piece. I started with his comfort. I stopped making his coffee, stopped asking about his day, stopped making excuses for his mood swings or his silence. He'd come home and the house would be immaculate, the kids fine, dinner warm. But I was cold. I wasn't mean. I was distant, surgical. Then I moved to his ego. I started dressing better, laughing more, getting home later. I took on new hobbies, new people, new energy. I let him feel what it's like to not be the center of my world anymore. He'd ask questions. I'd give half answers. He got insecure, and I loved that. But I never fought, never yelled, never gave him a reason to feel like the victim. And when he finally got a new job, after nearly a year of finding himself, I waited exactly 2 paychecks before making my move. I filed. Clean, direct, unapologetic. He was stunned, cried, shouted, told me he thought we were getting better. That's the thing though. He thought. But I knew. I had every receipt, every text, every email, every lawyer's number. I'd been building a case for 12 months while he was busy pretending to be a changed man. Now I was the one with power, control, timing. I wasn't just walking away, I was walking away with everything he had worked to protect. His reputation, his stability, and his self-image. And I didn't do it for revenge. Not anymore. I did it because I deserved peace. I deserved a life without lies, without manipulation, without a man who only realized my value when he feared losing it. I let the other woman crumble in public. But I let him die in the quiet. That's the thing about long games. You only win if you're patient enough to let them believe they're safe, just before you pull the rug out. After the papers were filed, I sat alone in our, soon to be my, kitchen and stared at the blinking cursor on the blank screen. I had one last thing to say. Not to him. To her. There was still one more piece left on the board. One more cord that needed cutting, permanently. She hadn't contacted me since the wedding stunt. I assumed she was too embarrassed or too scared. Maybe both. But silence wasn't closure. And I didn't want her living in a bubble thinking the storm had passed. No. I wanted her to feel the aftershock. So I wrote a letter. Not angry, not threatening, just honest, chillingly so. I reminded her of everything she had done. The deceit, the manipulation, the pathetic way she clung to a married man and convinced herself it was love. I reminded her of the photos, the texts, the shame her daughters still carried, the ones she caused. I told her that this final message wasn't for vengeance. It was a statement of finality. You are no longer a variable in my life, I wrote. You were never competition, just collateral damage. Then I enclosed something else, something she didn't expect. A copy of the divorce filing. She needed to see it, to understand that her affair didn't win. It didn't take my husband. He wasn't some prize to be fought over. He was a broken man I chose to leave behind. And her, she was just the stain he picked up along the way. I sent it with no return address, no signature, just one line handwritten on the back. This is how endings really look. 3 days later, she blocked me on LinkedIn. On every platform. I heard from a friend of a friend that she moved back to her hometown. That her daughters still don't speak to her. That her sister posted some cryptic quote about betrayal and blood. I don't care. Not anymore. She can disappear into the shadows now, where she belongs. As for me, I slept like a baby that night. Not because I won, but because I finished the game on my terms. She will remember me not as the scorned wife, but as the woman who dismantled her piece by piece without ever raising her voice. It wasn't loud. It wasn't ugly. It didn't play out like a soap opera with slammed doors and screaming matches. No, my divorce was precise, like a scalpel cutting out rot. When you've been with someone over 25 years, you don't just separate lives. You untangle them, slowly, carefully, deliberately. And I made sure every thread I pulled stung a little. He expected chaos, guilt, maybe even a final plea to fix things. He'd seen me burn through a woman with tactical rage, so he thought he'd braced for what was coming. He hadn't. Because I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. Instead, I served him papers on a Tuesday morning. I timed it with payday. The look on his face when he saw my lawyer had already calculated the spousal support asset division and outlined a clean financial trail of his affair that would destroy him in court. It was almost beautiful. His skin went pale and he finally realized something. I had been building my exit plan for months. He tried to speak. I didn't let him. I'm not staying for the kids. I'm leaving for them, I said. You'll ruin me. I smiled. No, you did that already. He begged for mediation. I offered court. He tried to renegotiate. I brought receipts. There was no yelling, no arguments. Just filings, facts, and lawyers who knew how to make a man squirm without ever raising their voices. He moved out 2 weeks later, into a cold, overpriced apartment downtown, the kind of place that felt like a hotel room someone never truly lived in. And while he tried to adjust to silence, I repainted our bedroom, threw out the old couch, bought new curtains and took my time savoring peace. My kids didn't need explanations. They saw the man he was. And though I never poisoned their perception, I didn't have to. He did that all on his own. The divorce finalized on a rainy Friday. I celebrated with wine, my sister, and a playlist full of angry women with beautiful voices. I wasn't just free. I was new. The life I rebuilt didn't look like the one I lost, because that old life had been built on my exhaustion, my compromise, and a lie. This one, it had truth in every corner. And I knew beyond doubt. Sometimes the cleanest revenge isn't fire. It's the absence that comes after. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks or screaming into the sky. It felt like a quiet morning. Coffee brewed exactly how I liked it. My playlist on shuffle. A dog curled up at my feet and no one asking why I hadn't folded laundry yet. The silence wasn't lonely, it was mine. I got my house back not just physically but spiritually. No more tension in the hallway, no more passive-aggressive questions, no more tiptoeing around a man who made me feel like I was too much and never enough all at once. I started small. I reorganized the kitchen. Got rid of the spice rack he swore was useless. Bought a set of knives I actually liked. I found joy in those little things. Joy in making space that didn't have his fingerprints on it. I went back to therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to carry old wounds into new chapters. My therapist helped me untangle years of guilt that weren't mine to carry. Helped me stop apologizing for reacting to betrayal. Helped me realize that I hadn't overreacted. I had underrated myself. I began sleeping through the night. No more waking up at 2 a.m. wondering if I was the problem. No more late-night stomach knots when he rolled over and mumbled her name in his sleep. I didn't dream of them anymore. I dreamt of oceans, of big cities, of laughter. And yes, I still had moments. I'd see a photo, a memory would hit. My hands would tremble for a second. But it passed. And every time it passed faster. One of the strangest parts of healing is realizing how much of yourself you gave away to maintain someone else's comfort. Not anymore. I joined a book club. Started saying yes to weekend getaways with friends I'd pushed away for too long. I bought a new perfume that didn't remind me of anything but myself. And slowly the woman I used to be came back. Sharper, bolder, softer in places but carved out in all the right ways. Then came the texts. From her. They were short. Almost pitiful. Please stop. You win. This has gone too far. I didn't respond. Because it wasn't about winning. It was about not letting people like her walk away untouched. She wanted my silence, but she'd already met the version of me that fights back. There was no grace left for someone who thought my life, and my pain, was just a side effect of her affair. She lost her daughters, her respect, her calm. Me. I found something worth far more than revenge. I found myself 655 days. That's how long it had been since I first discovered the affair. I didn't count at first, but after the first 100 days passed and I was still standing, I began marking them like notches on a tree, a quiet reminder that I survived each one. I was no longer burning with fury. The white-hot rage that had once consumed me had cooled into something stronger. Clarity. Precision. Peace. He still lived in the guest house, temporarily. The job he was looking for finally found him, after months of me gently tightening the financial leash. No more coasting on my tolerance. No more comfort at my expense. The lawyer meetings had already begun. Quietly. Strategically. My children were older now, old enough to understand that their father had betrayed not just me, but the very fabric of our home. I never poisoned their image of him, I didn't need to. They saw it. They lived it. But I didn't raise them to be vengeful. I raised them to pay attention. On a Sunday afternoon while he was at work and the sun slanted just right through the window, I sat with a pen and wrote him the final note. Not an email. Not a text. An actual letter. In my handwriting, because there's something about ink and paper that makes truth undeniable. It said, "You broke something that will never fully be repaired. Not because I am bitter, but because I am better. You don't owe me closure. I don't owe you forgiveness. But I owe myself a future. Thank you for showing me that even after 2 decades of marriage I can still rise without you. You will receive divorce papers by the end of the month. Consider this letter my formal goodbye. And in case you're wondering, no, I don't hate you. I pity you, because I got to live a life of truth and you chose to decorate yours with lies." I left the note in his favorite chair, folded neatly beside the TV remote. Then I took myself out to dinner. Alone. In a dress I bought just for the occasion. Bold red, open-backed, and unapologetically me. The waitress asked, "Celebrating anything?" I smiled. "Freedom," I said. "Because revenge is sweet, but peace? Peace is forever." The divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday morning. The courthouse was nearly empty, just a scattering of people clinging to the last pages of stories they never thought would end like this. He didn't show up in person. His attorney handled everything. Typical. But I was there. Not for him. For me. It wasn't about spite anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about reclaiming my name from the wreckage and stepping into a future without waiting for an apology, without asking for permission. Afterward, I drove to the lake where he had once promised me the world. I sat by the water with a thermos of coffee and a single photo, the one of me and our kids on a beach trip 3 summers ago. I looked happy in it, genuinely happy. And that woman, she wasn't gone. She was becoming again. I thought about everything that had happened, the affair, the lies, the confrontation, the letters, the games. And I didn't feel regret. I felt power. I dragged his secrets into the light. I had made her squirm in front of her children, her co-workers, her own mirror. I had unraveled the perfect fantasy both of them thought they could maintain, and exposed the ugly truth underneath. But I also reminded myself of who I was. Not just a wife, not just a mother. A force. I thought about all the women who sit in silence, who swallow their pain, who smile through betrayal for the sake of keeping the peace. And I whispered aloud to no one but the wind. You don't owe peace to the people who broke your soul. Closure isn't always a neat bow. Sometimes it's the sound of your own footsteps walking away. Sometimes it's the silence you no longer fill with questions. And sometimes it's a letter, a confrontation, a storm. But mostly it's a mirror. And the woman staring back at me? She was whole again. Not because he said sorry, not because she wept, but because I chose me. And I'd choose me again, every single time.